Welcome in, friends, to another story this week. Let's get into the introduction. Some stories don't rush in, they tiptoe, like a shy child standing on a stranger's porch. They arrive wrapped in quietness, carrying both ache and hope in the same small hands. This is one of those stories. It's about a boy who had no place to belong, a man who thought his heart had already lived its best years, and the way God sometimes knits two lonely lives together in the middle of winter. This week's story is called Two Lonely Hearts. The storm had settled over Misty Fork like a heavy quilt, thick and unmoving. Snowflakes drifted sideways in the wind, tapping against windows and piling up on fence posts. Most folks had hurried home hours ago, but Jonah Parker was still walking, one slow step after another, down the long, winding ridge road. His shoes were worn thin, his coat was too small, and his heart felt even smaller. He'd been in more foster homes than he could count. Some were kind, some were not, but none of them ever lasted. When the last family sent him away with nothing but a trash bag of clothes, Jonah stopped expecting anything good to stay. Up ahead, a faint porch light flickered through the snow. Jonah hesitated. He didn't want to bother anyone, but the cold was biting through his sleeves and his fingers were turning numb. He stepped onto the porch and knocked. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door creaked open, and Amos Whitaker stood there, tall, thin, and wrapped in an old flannel shirt that had seen better days. His gray beard was uneven, and his eyes carried the kind of sadness that comes from losing someone you love more than life itself. "What are you doing out here in this weather, son?" Amos asked, voice rough from disuse. Jonah swallowed. "Just walking." "In a blizzard?" Amos raised an eyebrow. "That ain't walking, that's surviving." Jonah didn't answer. He didn't know how. Amos stepped aside. "Come on in. No sense letting the cold finish what life already tried to do." Jonah entered slowly, as if afraid the warmth might disappear. The cabin smelt like cedar and stew. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, and an old hound dog lifted her head, sniffed Jonah, then thumped her tail once in approval. "Sit by the fire," Amos said. "You look half frozen." Jonah sat, holding his hands out towards the flames. The heat stung at first, then settled into his bones like a blessing. Amos ladled stew into a bowl and set it in front of him. "Eat, talk later." Jonah ate like someone who hadn't tasted kindness in a long time. The storm trapped them together for 3 days. Jonah slept on the old couch under a quilt stitched with faded blues and greens. Amos pretended not to notice how the boy tucked the quilt around himself like it was the first safe thing he'd ever held. During the daylight hours, Amos taught Jonah how to split kindling, how to carry in firewood without dropping it, and how to feed the hound dog, Daisy, who quickly decided Jonah was her new favorite person. Jonah, in turn, brought something back into the cabin that Amos hadn't felt in years: life. The boy hummed under his breath when he worked. He laughed softly at Daisy's antics. He asked questions about everything: the mountains, the weather, the old photographs on the mantel. One afternoon, Jonah pointed to a picture of a smiling woman holding a basket of apples. "That your wife?" he asked gently. Amos nodded. "My Ruth. Been gone 10 years now." Jonah didn't say, "I'm sorry." He just nodded, the way someone does when they understand loss too well. On the fourth evening after supper, Jonah sat by the fire with his knees pulled up to his chest. "Mr. Amos," he whispered, "I ain't got nobody. Not really." Amos felt something twist inside him. He'd spent years convincing himself he was meant to finish his life alone. But looking at Jonah, small, brave, and trying so hard not to cry, he felt a stirring he hadn't felt since Ruth was alive. "Son," Amos said softly, "sometimes the Lord sends us what we need before we even know how to ask for it." Jonah looked up, eyes shining. "This house has been quiet too long," Amos continued. "If you want, you can stay. Not just for the storm, for as long as you need, maybe longer." Jonas blinked, as if trying to make sure the words were real. "You mean live here?" If you want to, Amos said, his voice thick. I reckon we could both use some company. Jonas didn't speak. He simply stood, walked over, and wrapped his arms around Amos's middle, a small, trembling hug that carried every hope he'd been afraid to voice. Amos rested a hand on the boy's back, steady and sure. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, winter finally loosened its grip. The reflection of this week's story is some winters settle deep, not just in the air, but in the heart. They make us wonder if warmth will ever return. But God has a way of sending companionship right into the middle of our coldest seasons, sometimes in the shape of a lonely boy, sometimes in the shape of an old man who thought his purpose has passed. Jonah found a home that night, but Amos found something too: laughter, purpose, and the reminder that love doesn't retire. It simply waits for a place to land. And maybe that's the quiet truth tucked inside this story. Even in the coldest winter, God is still writing new beginnings. Thank you so much for coming and joining me this week. I hope you come back next week.